Thank you for all coming to Highline Heritage Museum for 7 stories. Tonight is about transformation or change, and we have a full lineup of storytellers tonight. Should be good. I'm Gina with Highline Heritage Museum, and I'd like to take a moment to recognize that we are on Native land. Please think in honor of those who have come before us, including the people of the Duwamish, Suquamish, Nisqually, and Muckleshoot tribes. And any information you'd like about 7 stories or Highline Heritage Museum, we can help you at the desk on your way out. Please check that your phones are off. Thank you. And your MC tonight is Fred. Come on down, Fred. Thank you.
The Highline Heritage Museum is really incredible. I don't know if you've had a chance to actually tour the museum, but you should really come back because they have some remarkable artifacts about the area and just some really cool stuff. So come back, not just for this, also for that. Want to thank the Highline Heritage Museum, also For Culture, the City of Burien, Burien Culture Hub, and the Burien Arts Association, all of whom support 7 Stories. And so tonight, if you haven't been here before, it's pretty straightforward. There's 7 people telling 7 stories, not all the same story, 7 different stories, and they have 7 minutes each to tell their stories. And so we'll go through, I'll introduce each person, they'll come and tell their story, and you'll be enamored and amazed, and we have some folks that have done this a lot of times and some folks for whom this is brand new, and so definitely welcome to everyone. And if you are inspired to tell a story, you should do that. And so get some information at the front, or you can ask Sybil about ways that you can participate in the future, not just in the audience, but also up here. So our first, and I'm Fred, so that you already heard that. Okay, our first storyteller tonight is my neighbor, Deborah Apple. She lives in Burien, likes to walk, is a committed storyteller, and also loves to read cookbooks. I don't think she's reading a cookbook story tonight, but her story will surprise you, so come on up.
When I was 20, I left New England, where I'd grown up, and moved to Austin, Texas to go to the university. I was so excited, not because of the classes, but because for the first time in my life, I was going to be living on my own apartment, without my parents telling me what to do or a roommate in my face. I was just going to be there all by myself, learning to live on my own, an independent young woman. I found myself a little studio apartment, explored Austin, started classes, and I loved it. It was great. One day I was driving home, and I had this hankering for some ice-cold chocolate milk. So I went to the 7-Eleven near where I lived, got the milk out of the refrigerator, and when I turned around, there was this guy, this young guy standing there, staring at me like he knew me. But I'd never seen this guy before. I did not know who this guy was, and he gave me the creeps. So I went and got in line with my milk, and I'm standing there, and I did one of these things. Just to see where he was. And I saw he was behind the person behind me, so I thought, okay, there's a buffer. Just come on, people, come on, let's get through this line. So I finally get up there, I get my milk, got out in the car, and I buckled up and turned on the car. But before I took off, I looked up to see where that guy was. And he was still behind the other guy who was now at the register. So I go, okay, I took off. And I went way down the street. I turned into an alley that went to the parking lot behind my apartment building. And I ran up, and I closed the door, and I locked it, and I'm going like, I thought, what are you doing? Get a grip. Unless this guy is Superman and has X-ray vision, he didn't see where you went. He doesn't know where you live. Just be cool. So I'm cool, I'm being cool. There was a knock at the door. I opened the door, and it was the guy. It was the guy! It was the guy! It was impossible, and yet there he was, on my doorstep. I was so shocked, I just stood there. He said, "Hi, my name is Joe. I know you like chocolate milk, so would you like to go out with me for some hot chocolate?" I thought, really? This guy is here to ask me out for hot chocolate? I thought, okay, I downgraded him from serial killer to just really nerdy guy. But I didn't want to tell him my name. Now he wants to know my name. Well, I was taking Portuguese that semester, and in class we all had Portuguese names. So, Aurea. He goes, Aurea. Ooh, that's pretty. Is that Spanish? I said, no, it's Portuguese. Are you from Portugal? No, my parents are from Brazil. Oh, that's so cool. Did you grow up in Brazil? No, they'd moved to New York, and so I grew up there. And he said, oh, wow. And here I am lying, just lying, one lie after another, making this all up. I found it disturbing that I could actually lie so glibly to this guy. So, because my parents had taught me, you don't go around lying. Lying is not good. And yet, here I was, making up new parents from Brazil. So are you a student here? Yeah. Oh, me too. Yeah, I'm in my 3rd year. Yeah, I go to the university. I live right there in that building right there, and he points to my window, to the building across the street. And I get it. He doesn't have X-ray vision. He lives across the street, and he's been watching me through the window. And I guess when he saw me in person, he decided it was time to introduce himself and invite me out for hot chocolate. Well, when I realized what was going on, I just was so creeped out and angry. I just didn't like this. So, Aurea, you want to go get some hot chocolate? I said, no. And my name isn't Aurea. He said, you just told me that's your name. I go, yeah, I lied. He said, what? Are your parents from Brazil? No. Did you grow up in New York? No. He said, okay, I really don't understand this. Why would you lie to me? Why are you telling me all these lies? You're a stranger who showed up on my doorstep. I don't know who you are. I was just protecting myself. Protecting yourself from me? I just wanted to get to know you. You seem like a nice person, and I'm a very nice person, but you're a liar. You are not a good person. You are not a nice person. And he stalked off, and I was just so freaked out because it's important to me to be a nice person. I was raised with this idea that you should be a nice person. And I just didn't know how to deal with this. Well, looking back at this event after all these years, many years later, in going over a story, it brings up a lot of stuff. You have a lot of new things to it. And I thought, okay, not only was it that I wanted to be nice, and it bothered me that he told me I wasn't nice, but that another thing I'd grown up with was, what will people think? What will people think? And here, looking back, I think, wait a minute. I was having a polite conversation with some guy who had no business coming over and knocking on my door just because I didn't know what else to do. I mean, that's crazy. So anyway, and in order to do it, I couldn't even do it myself. I had to invent a new persona to do all that, and that's what I did. So that was my reinventing myself. Thank you.
Special thanks to the B-Town blog that is recording this evening, and to Frank, who is here from the B-Town blog, for Scott Schaefer. Larry, excuse me. Larry. I'm creating a whole story for you too. Anyway, so thanks to Larry and the B-Town blog, who's recording this evening, and putting it online, and so you can check it out again later if you want more. Tonight is a special night. It's the beginning of fall. It's also special because I'm here with you, and now I'm going to tell my story. And so it's special as well because it's my husband's 49th birthday, and we've been together 20 years. We've raised 3 children. They are 18, 14, and 13, and you might be wondering, well, where is he? Like, why are you not with him on his 49th birthday? And again, we have been together for 20 years, and we raised 3 children, 18, 14, and 13. And so the best present for him is some alone time. And so that's what he's got going on tonight. I did take him out last weekend to the Tina Turner musical, which was amazing at the Paramount. Never in a million years did I imagine that I would get to see Tina Turner in concert, which I actually did get to do, and the experience of going to the Tina Turner musical was kind of a reenactment of that for me in a little way. But Tina Turner in concert, I saw her in Germany when I lived in Germany, and the Germans are absolutely gaga for Tina Turner. I mean, just absolutely. So the experience of going and seeing her in the stadium in Germany was just absolutely phenomenal. I think that the woman sitting in front of us at the Paramount may also have been German because her response to every time the actor playing Tina Turner sang was as if she was in a stadium. And so she was singing really loud and she had her hands up, and she was the only person in our section that was doing that. The rest of the folks were just kind of sitting quietly and enjoying and maybe tapping, snapping, whatever. My husband, unfortunately, was sitting directly behind her, and so during her animated kind of performance of the performance on stage, he was having a hard time seeing and really distracted. So he has absolutely no chill, and so he tapped on her shoulder and was like, "Do you think maybe you could tone it down just a little? I can't really see," which of course went over exceptionally well. And so for the remainder of the first half, not only was she having her hands up and singing really loudly, she also put her hair over the back of her chair, and she would toss her hair so that it would graze his thighs and knees. Anyway, it was pretty crazy. He is, although we've been together 20 years, he is not the first kind of high-strung dude that I have had a relationship. The last relationship I had before this 20-year one was when I lived in Chicago with a guy named Bruce Melvin Elrod, which I think is the ideal name for a homosexual in the Midwest. And Bruce stopped breathing on our first date. And so he was dramatic from the get-go. I don't know exactly what he ate, but he had an allergic reaction to something. I discovered through that you can have a standing order at Walgreens for an EpiPen. And so while he was turning red and then blue, I was running across the street and getting epinephrine for him. And it was strangely satisfying to stab him in the thigh. But also because he got to breathe again, and that was good for everyone. One of the other things that Bruce and I did together at work, his work team went to Germany, and because I had lived in Germany and I used to teach German, he was like, "Oh, you should come with us. That'd be really fun. Maybe you can help." I mean, everyone in Germany speaks English, but that's cool to have a person there who speaks German. And so I didn't realize until it was getting closer that the day that we decided to go, that afternoon, that morning I had a colonoscopy scheduled. And it was the first time I'd had a colonoscopy, so I didn't really know what to expect. In any case, so I went from the colonoscopy, ran home, got my bags, and then ran to the airport. So when you have a colonoscopy, they fill your intestines with air, right? Because they have to have a camera. So I was so gassy, it was out of control. So I go to the airport and I show up and I've got my luggage and we're waiting, and at the airport I kind of could play it off because there was a lot of people around and stuff. But when we got on the plane, I was like, wow, that is awful. Who is that? I was trying really hard to pretend like it wasn't me. I was very grateful that they don't have smoking on airplanes anymore because we would have gone down in flames because of the gas was so bad. In any case, we did make it through the trip. After we got to Germany, we had to take a little van, all of us together, and they did notice that the smell came with us to the hotel. And so anyway, that was my trip with Bruce. That was kind of the beginning of the end of our relationship. I am grateful, of course, that relationship did end, and I could move here and then meet my husband now and have this 20 years together. And so happy birthday to him, and thank you for listening to my story. Okay, next up, we have Shelley Park. Shelley is a Burien community member, mother of 3, stepmother of 4, and an enthusiastic grandmother. She believes in the power of community that occurs when people agree to come together despite their differences to create a place for all. And her story concerns a life change. So, Shelley.
So this is my first time, and I'm not super extemporaneous, so I wrote it all down. So if I don't make amazing eye contact with you, I apologize at the beginning. I was a new mother when I turned 18. I had a plan for my life, and then I didn't. Because I was pregnant my senior year, depressed, lost, I dropped from 3rd in my class to 7th, but still, I was awarded a 4-year full-ride scholarship to any state school in Missouri upon graduating. I think they gave it to me as a Hail Mary, but I couldn't work, go to school, and raise a child. I was in college to get a degree in theater or something, but I decided to drop out when the babysitter's son bit my son. Mm-hmm. Waiting tables was my occupation. In Kansas City at that time, I could afford my 1-bedroom apartment, food and gas, working weekends and 1 or 2 lunches per week. Family helped watch my son. I was more than happy to be able to spend most of my days raising this amazing human being, who is now, by the way, a bona fide rocket scientist. I have always been a writer, but I began to experiment with oil paints. I set myself up in the small living room of our apartment, situated in an old brick building set across from the Nelson Atkins Museum of Art Sculpture Park and expansive lawns. There was something about working with color that drew me in. I started with oil sticks and thick paper, then graduated to oil paints and canvas. There was something about working with color that drew me in. The smell of linseed oil is still one of my favorite smells. My early works were very crude, but filled with energy and emotion. My education did not stop when I quit university. I continued to explore my art through painting, dance, writing, music, and even started some early furniture design and build and 3D painting experiments. I studied philosophy, art history, design, architecture, Little Chinese and French, literature from all over the world, anything that drew my attention. I had moved away from Kansas City to Yakima, married my son's father, had another child, a daughter, and returned to Kansas City, where my husband left us. I was living a full life as a single young mother, attempting to find my way, my path, still waiting tables. Then I got restless. It was the spring of 1999. I was 27 years old. I had my first art show in a coffee shop in Chicago. I had organized my first community art event in a gallery space, Crimson Park Gallery, that I rented for a month in the West Bottoms, a beautiful industrial area of Kansas City. I had performed in a dance piece at the Nelson Atkins Museum of Art as a part of a celebration of Georgia O'Keeffe's work through movement, and I joined a dance company. And I lost my place. Sorry. Oh my goodness. Wow. Okay, well, I had moved away from Kansas City. I already said that part. Sorry. Yada, yada. But I was wanting more. My ex had moved west to pursue consulting work, and it seemed the perfect opportunity to expand my artistic horizons and quench my adventurous spirit while bringing my children closer to where their father lived. He had landed in San Francisco. I had a very romantic view of the Bay Area at that time. and I couldn't wait a moment longer. It was late June when I decided that it was time. I had also decided that no matter what, I was not going to wait tables any longer. Serving had served me well, but I wanted to do something different. I packed up our belongings, putting most in storage in my in-laws' basement, and headed across the country with my sweet children, some suitcases, a tent, a cooler of food, all packed into my Volkswagen Jetta, and we made our way to the Pacific Northwest. We landed in Yakima in time to celebrate my maternal grandparents' 50th anniversary. It was good to see my grandparents. The plan was to spend a couple of weeks with them and make my way to a new life in the Bay Area. As it turned out, my ex and I weren't on the same page, and that isn't how things were going to go. I needed to quickly figure out where we were going to land. I needed to figure out where the kids were going to go to school. Fall was approaching. My parents had friends who lived in Des Moines. I did grow up in the Midwest in Iowa, so the S is painful for me. I reached out and asked if we could stay with them until I was able to get on my feet. They said yes after some dialogue. It's a big risk to take on a little family, especially when I didn't know what I was going to do for income. The children and I headed west across the Cascades. The husband was a carpenter. He happened to be working on a job site on Maplewild Drive, a very large colonial-style house, which is robin's egg blue now, it was white, and they were looking for a painter. I was looking for work, and, well, I had painted before. Did it matter that I hadn't done that sort of painting, only oil on canvas? I grabbed the opportunity. My first job was painting a wooden handrail, complete with balusters and newel. This is not an easy task if you guys have painted before. It's not. But I adapted very quickly. I learned how to patch holes, sand, and prime. I learned how to paint walls, ceilings, and trim, all valuable skills. One day, the wife who was in charge of the expansive remodel asked if I did any decorative painting. I asked her to explain what she was looking for. Without hesitation, I said I could. The next day, I went to the library and checked out a handful of books on decorative painting. I'm not sure how I did it, but I was able to create some beautiful work in her home. Anything that she asked me to do, I accomplished. I even created a game table for her children based on a collection of wooden French clowns, which was a little creepy. In the late spring of 2000, after the husband found out that his wife was less than honest about the budget on this job and fired us all, I decided to establish my own painting company. I called it Crimson Park Design. I created a business card with the help of my father and a one-page marketing piece that I took from door to door in the neighborhood. In my unconscious, I was mapping a path. I painted and stained exclusively for a couple of years. One day a client asked if I did color consultations. I said, sure. That evolved into space planning and then interior design, even designing a full suite of office furniture for a home in Ravenna. In fact, I do a lot of custom furniture design. My interior design has even won some notice in 2 international design contests. My journey has continued to evolve to the point that I'm now designing homes, full homes, including the plumbing, electrical, HVAC, roof lines, surface water management, everything. It helped that I started this path working on construction sites. I saw open walls, observed the structure, worked with carpenters and asked questions. I'm always curious and always ask a million questions. I can see design in my mind, and without ever advertising, I have stayed just busy enough to keep a mostly manageable schedule. I have no idea where I will end up on this journey, but I look back at the very anxious teenage mother I was over 30 years ago when I quit university and had no clue what I was going to do with my life, and feel pretty proud of how I've come so far.
So our next storyteller is Sven Air, who is a Buddhist musical artist and amateur linguist. Sven's story shows what to be mindful of. While he's better off than he's ever been, there are hardships that arrive.
A quick statement if you recognize me from a story I told before under a different name. Svenart Vitsit is my artist name, my new name in some contexts. It's Kartuli for we don't know. I am Buddhist. If my Christian minister father heard me say that, it wouldn't go well. One of the worst things you can do is turn your back on the truth of my past religion. Probably a pretty common thing for most religions. But even worse than that, like the worst thing you can do, suffering a fate worse than hell, what's not outright said by name, it's somehow being a Buddhist. I'll try to explain the logic of that nearer to the end of the story. By the way, this is a weird Christian sect with a lot of doctrine to the side of the Bible. That will probably become clearer near to the end as well. There's a lot of examples of how I didn't listen to my father, mostly to my benefit, I think. Too many to go into all of them, but I want to share a more ridiculous one with you. He always said self-esteem is bad, or therapy is bad. I think this was motivated by the idea of their secular approach, and he really thought you should go to a minister for advice. So 8 years ago, when I had a long bout of, feeling really depressed, a more in-depth story for another time, I went to him and asked what to do about depression. And he just said, it's the devil's doing that. Okay, what am I supposed to do with that? Pray? The last time I prayed in earnest, so my brother wouldn't be upset, was for the Cubs to win the World Series. And that took 13 years to take effect. But yeah, not really thinking my father's advice was that helpful. I got a therapist, and probably saved my life. And I'm not trying to vilify my father. I don't want you to hate him. There are good things about him too. I'm not going to go into them for this because it's not really the point of the story. Buddhism would tell us there is no evil or good. He is largely a product of his causes and conditions, as am I, a rippling effect of new causes and conditions. Buddhism would tell me that I am now beginning to become free now that I'm aware of these forces acting through me. But the teachers at a recent retreat I went to would caution me that everybody loves a Buddha, everybody hates a Buddhist. This speaks to the phenomena of those newly acquainted with the practice and seeing the healing it can provide, obnoxiously going forth and proclaiming Buddhism to anyone they see in need of help. Guilty as charged. I'm trying to be better about that, though. And by the way, I'm not trying to excuse my father either. I still feel a lot of the pain that he caused, even if he thought he was doing the best thing for me. But contrary to what this shirt might indicate, I don't judge him or anyone back there. That religion might actually be the most wonderful thing for them. I don't know. And if it is, I'm happy for them. I'm not trying to change anyone. But clearly it didn't work for me. I used my past religion as a tool to become cynical and negative. Just the way they have judgment wrapped up in it for me. It's really nice to be free of it. To sum up my life's journey to this point, in adolescence, I built a facade of my past religion around me in an attempt to gain my Christian minister father's approval. Didn't really get it, but then in college, the cracks began to show, experiencing other people's lives and how maybe that way actually worked a lot better for them. After that, I was trying to find myself. I got my first therapist, and that seemed to work for a bit. I eventually fled to the West Coast to get away from the sphere of influence of my father. I'm here now. I got a new therapist who recognized that meditation would probably help me. They pointed me over to a meditation teacher, and almost magically, I found myself in Buddhist meditation. I am now the most positive I have ever been in my entire life. But it's still a struggle to deal with my father, the relationship I have with him. Part of me wants to be entirely out in the open with him and say, this is who I am, Dad, deal with it. But that might be a little bit selfish of me. Buddhism tells me the idea of principle of least harm, that the pain that would cause him, thinking that I'm in a fate worse than hell, which I'll get to, And he's not going to change his mind on that religion. He's reaffirmed it so many times. And part of me, that's probably still a little bit seeking his approval, wants to maintain a little bit of the relationship that we do have, even if it's just a hope from his side that one day I return to the fold, the prodigal son. And that can't be maintained if he knows what I've become. It's this dilemma I sit with, this unresolved tension to have a continuing felt experience with. To paraphrase a Hindu saying, the middle path is to walk along a razor blade. And if my father ever heard about what I've become, I think I'd say this to him. This isn't easy for me either. I want to believe that your way of thinking could magically heal any wounds we have, and we can become one big happy family. But just to be present, to recognize what is actually happening now, that's my felt sense of how to heal wounds. To live, fully aware of the pain. And this divulging for the world to see, it's a necessary step for me. I've lived in fear of my father finding out various things about me through a series of unlikely events for far too long. And with this act, I conquer that. And even if I go home tonight, and due to this divulging, my twisting gut keeps me up for days, I'll have begun the healing process with this open admission of how hard this is. And that brings us to the end, and I've thrown a little humor in here to not end on such a down note. There's a passage that it seems like my father would quote all the time when I was a kid. There's a lot of passages he'd quote all the time when I was a kid. This one is about those who believe there's no good or evil, i.e. me now. That in the next life, they suffer a fate worse than hell and become skeletons burning at the edge of space. I didn't say it at the time, but I was thinking, a skeleton burning in space? Whoa, pretty heavy metal, Dad. So yeah, no wonder I ended up becoming a Buddhist. I was being told how cool it was. Thanks for the free therapy.
I'm in my living room packing for a 3-week-long trip to 5 different countries in Europe. I am going to be traveling on low-cost airlines, so I'm limited to just a simple carry-on bag. With the turbans that I wear, that's like mission impossible that I'm trying to conquer because they take up a lot of space, but I'm determined. So I remove everything that I don't need and I pack to the bare bones that you can possibly imagine, including even the credit cards that I'm about to take. I only take one because I've been to Europe before and never had any problems. So I just limit myself to one debit card that I'm going to embark on this journey on. So I leave Chicago in an afternoon and I arrive in Munich the next day about 10:30 in the morning, and I get to my hostel that I'm about to stay in for a couple of days fairly uneventfully. I check in and I want to go have some German pretzels as I just landed there. I want to try it out. So I stroll down the street and I try to figure out where I can go find some authentic German cuisine. As I'm walking down, it occurs to me that Europeans are not as used to credit cards as other places in the world are, so I should probably get some cash. And I stop by at one of the banks that has an ATM to try to get some money that I can use to make business transactions for German food. As I walk into the bank, it's about lunchtime, so the bank is closed, but they have an ATM inside a glass door that I go into. And I put my card in, punch in the numbers, and I said 100 euros is good enough because I'm only here for a couple of days. So I punch in the number, the machine makes some noise, it spits out a little white paper, it says transaction denied. I'm like, what, why? Not thinking much of it, I just like, okay, when I put my email and I usually type in wrong password sometimes because of fat fingers, so it's possible I put in a wrong digits or something. So I try again, not thinking much, and same thing. It's the machine spits out a white piece of paper. It says transaction denied. I only have one pin. I shouldn't be telling you this, but I only have one pin for everything. So I'm like, this is the only pin I have. I mean, so I try again. That didn't work. This time, the third time, I noticed that the keyboard on the ATM machine, the European keyboards are different. The numbers are in different places. And I'm used to like putting numbers in a certain manner because the number is, it's one pin. I'm used to the pattern, kind of like on the phone. So I try again, and I punch in the numbers very, very slowly. The numbers that I have, very slowly. I was like, okay, should work. The machine starts making some noise, and I'm excited. Finally, I'm like, can't get this machine in the way of me getting a pretzel, so I am excited to hear the noise that are coming up. So I wait around and I look, just waiting for the money to come out as this thing is making some noise. So the machine finally stops making a noise, but it spits out a white piece of paper. It says transaction denied, but this time nothing comes out. So I'm like, okay, where's my card? Like, what's happening? So I've traveled this is my 10th trip to Europe, okay? Never in a million years would I have imagined a machine taking the only debit card that I purposely chose and not took anything else, and it has swallowed that debit card. So immediately, I'm actually frozen. I don't know what to do, but there's a lot of commotion in the back because all these German people have lined up, and I am sure they're talking about me because it's like, what is this guy doing with the turban? He seems to be lost, but I don't know what to do. So I try to ask for some help, but either they don't speak English or they pretend not to speak English, but they can't help. So I don't know what to do. So I moved to the side because they're making a lot of nuckus. I'm like, okay, I can't deal with two problems at the same time. So let me move away and figure out what to do with this situation. So as I move away on the side, two things come to my mind. And I'm like, thank God this is not an ATM in a wall because I wouldn't know what to do with that. And then second, I'm glad this is a Thursday, not a Saturday, and the bank is open so I can actually ask them, please return my debit card. The bank is closed for lunch, so I waited around. It occurred to me that I don't have an ID either to show them, hey, this is my card. So I quickly go back to the hostel where my stuff is. I get my passport so that I can show them, hey, this is my card. It should be matching the number, the name, everything else on my debit card. So I quickly come back. By the time I come back, the bank is open. I go in, stand in the line. There's this bald, stocky German teller on the thing. So I explain the situation to him. He's like, this is what happened, yada, yada, and all that. He goes into the room, picks up a key, goes to the ATM, opens the ATM, recovers my card. And I'm like, okay, I will be reunited with my card. So as he brings back the card, and I say, okay, I get the passport ready. I'm like, here's my passport. Please return my card. He's like, no, you're not getting this card back. I am not giving this back to you. So for the next 30 minutes, after a lot of discussions, arguments, I tried negotiating, tried logically, reasoning, emotionally, whatever. I tried every single thing that was possible, but the only thing that I could get out of this guy and the only thing I could negotiate with this guy was, you can make a phone call, that's about all I can offer you, but he's not going to give me my card back. Okay, that was very disturbing to hear, but he's like, you can call the American embassy or whatever else. Now, the debit card I have is from a credit union. This is not a bank, it's a credit union, a local credit union from Kentucky. Okay, there's no other ones outside of the city I live in. So I called the credit union because it's earlier in the day, and they said, well, they can send me another card, but it's going to take a week for them to print it out and another week to mail it, and by that time I'll be on my way back. I was like, well, that's useless. So the guy also says, oh, you can call the American embassy. Maybe they can help. I called the embassy. They're like, why are you calling me? Call Western Union. I've heard of Western Union. I don't know what it is, but okay, it sounds like an interesting idea. I can try it. But they're like, don't call here. Call your parents or somebody. Okay, that's fine. So after 2 hours, 2 hours of being in the bank, I just leave the bank hopeless, annoyed, angry, hungry, and thirsty. I don't know what to do. So as I'm walking down, going back to my hostel, I was like, okay, this is not how I planned it. So I go back to the hostel, and I call a few friends and say, what should I do in this situation? There's nothing we could come up with, even talking to my friends, that potentially could save me from this disaster that I was facing. Now, this is back in the day when there's no Venmo, there's no Zelle, there's nothing like that. So I don't have any other mechanisms. But as I'm talking to one of my friends, he says, oh, you know what? You had just transacted with me on a laptop, and he had given me money in my PayPal account. So it's like, okay, maybe that's my ticket to help myself out of this situation. And then I said, maybe I can tell somebody, hey, I give you money, and I can PayPal you some money in whatever currency that you want. I'm in a bar, I'm sitting, and I hear a girl sitting there. She's like, oh, she's talking to the bartender. There's nobody else here. And she says, oh, I'm from Pittsburgh. And she's talking, so I overhear them. And I was like, okay, my people. maybe I can ask for some help here. So, but there's a problem. The problem is I don't like talking to strangers, and I don't like asking help from strangers. But given that this is the only choice I have to muster the courage to walk up to her and say, could you please help her? So I walk up to her and I explain the situation. She's looking at me like I am reading an email from a Nigerian bank and I'm trying to scam her by asking her for a bank account. And after I explain, I could tell from her expression this is not going well. And I asked her for, hey, would you be willing to do this? She just said no, and she said something else. But the moment she said no, everything else I just blurted out, because to me it's like, okay, this is something. I had expectations that she could help me out, but she didn't. It's okay, no problem. Maybe it was the way I explained it or whatever. No problem. So I go back and sit on the couch that was in the bar, and at this point I'm really thirsty, so I go to the bar and say, hey, bartender, you have some water? And I start having a conversation with him. I tell the situation, what happened. The bartender suddenly says, no problem, I'll help you out. Okay, great. So we're able to quickly transact. I transact everything I have in the PayPal account, but at the very least, that's a backup that I have, because I'm traveling to 5 different countries, and I didn't know this at the time, but every single country had their own currency. So even if I had euros, I had to figure out some way of asking somebody for help every time I reached a different destination. So this guy was very helpful, and I'm very grateful that he was able to help. And then I go back in my room, and I meet another guy named Nikolai. Nikolai was from Bulgaria. There's 4 of us in the room because I'm in a hostel. And Bulgaria is the last place that I'm about to visit. During this trip, I was actually very lucky and fortunate that every place that I went to, I met somebody who was going to be in the next country that I was visiting. So Nikolai was the very last country that I was visiting on that trip. During that trip, I managed to overcome my fear and my vulnerabilities to be able to ask people for help and manage through that situation. I really saw the good in people when I needed help. So by the time I arrived in Bulgaria, I did met up with Nikolai, who became close to me because he helped me out, and I really appreciated that gesture a lot. He was giving me a tour of his city, and he was telling me multiple things. First, he said, Bulgaria has changed quite a bit. First, it's not as rich of a country as Germany or other places in Europe are. People are still living on not such a large amount of salary. So he said that, and he also said Bulgaria is transforming from being a post-Soviet country to a more modern European country. When he said that, it really resonated with me because at that moment, it occurred to me that to survive and to thrive, I really don't need much, because I survived the entire trip with just 500 euros that I had in my PayPal account. And the other thing that he mentioned really stuck with me even today, because it, just as Bulgaria was going through a transformation, I was going through a real-time transformation that I realized later that really showed me the power of vulnerability and human connection that I still cherish up till today. So that was very transformative. Now, as the trip finished, and I arrived back to my home, I realized that the debit card that I had actually changed the PIN before I left, because it's like, I have the same PIN for everything, I should change it. So I had changed the PIN, but I forgot about it completely. And then, even if I had gotten my credit card, it wouldn't have worked because the machine automatically canceled it the third time around. So, thank you.
So many lessons in your story about people. Don't trust people from Pittsburgh, apparently. Maybe that wasn't the lesson. I should mention the museum has memberships, and so if you're interested in becoming a member of the Highline Heritage Museum, I bet you can find out information about that tonight as well on your way out. Our next speaker is Michael Schilly. Michael is a writer and a man with a terrific memory full of details from his experiences. This story is from his apprenticeship days in England. Michael.
Good evening. I actually changed my story. It was, I ran some old stories on YouTube, and there were so many happy stories and so much laughing going on that I thought, if I told this story, it's so down, everybody's going to leave miserable. So I sort of I do have a lot of stories, and it's I got one in a folder, and the folder on the front says life stories of a hyperactive kid, which I didn't know until I was 62 years old that I was hyperactive. But it sort of a light switch went on when they told me, and it sort of explained why I made certain decisions through life that actually affected my whole family. One of those has come to North America to live. Anyway, this story is it's a travel journal, really. My mother was born in 1904. My father in 1904. She was born in father in 1904, mother in 1902. When they got together, they were cyclists in their 30s and got married. And when they left the church, their cyclist friends held bicycle wheels up as a tunnel of love as they left the church. And on top of their cake was a tandem, which is a bicycle made for two, right? And that was their first purchase when they went home. And when I came along, of course, they bought a sidecar. And as soon as mother recovered and this little boy was old enough to do it, he was put in the sidecar and off we used to go. And it was a big thing on Sundays that they would go out to tea and meet the whole club at a tea. And so I used to go out to this thing, and they'd sit there and have tea, I guess. But the story actually begins when I was 12 years old. I thought I was going to be a racing cyclist, and I mapped this course out around the village, and I would try and beat my time on a stopwatch. I got pretty fit, and so I said to my dad, I said, I'd like to go on a tour. Oh, he said, yeah. Yeah, I said, I'd like to tour Wales. Oh, well, how do you think you're going to do that? Well, I said, we go to these hostels. Couldn't you get me a card to go to the hostels? Yeah, he said, but you've got to be 16. I said, well, just try it. There was no this identification thing in those days. So he sent away for it, and sure enough, his card come. And I was 16 years old already. So the first day I took off, I'd done 100 miles, got into Wales and went to this youth hostel. And it was really great. We'd been to youth hostels before, but I loved it because they always give dinner. You had to do a few chores the next morning after breakfast. They give you breakfast, pay for it, of course. And you do these chores to help the thing go along. So I went up through Wales, through what they call the Beacon Beacons. There were big grassy hills. And then I went over to the west coast to a place called Aberystwyth. Does anybody speak Welsh in here? There's a word in Welsh, 26 letters long. And my old friend Denzel, he's gone now, but he used to be able to say this word, and I used to keep on getting him to say it. And it finishes up with go, go, go on the end. But he knew the whole word, and it was pretty amazing. Anyway, I got up to this Aberystwyth, and then I went inland again and through Snowdonia, which is second highest mountain in the British Isles. And I got up to Carnarvon, and Carnarvon has a castle. And that's actually where the Queen put the sword on the present king's shoulder and made him Duke of Wales, right? And there's a hostel inside there. And I got to this hostel, and they were full up. And I couldn't get dinner. And it was late afternoon. And the next hostel was about 40 miles away. And we didn't used to use the phone and book up those days. We just used to go. And, no cell phones. We didn't have phones at home in those days. Anyway, I get on the bike and I get to the hostel. And it's, they have a bed, but dinner's finished. And I felt, I actually started to get homesick. I thought, I'm going to go home tomorrow. So I looked at the map. 300 miles, right? I said, well, I'll give it a shot. So I got up early, had a good breakfast, and I'm off. Go across the Welsh border, a place called Chester. It was the only bit ever been there. It's a beautiful old medieval city. And I go onto the main road, and I take off. And I'm cycling as hard as I can. And I keep on feeling somebody behind me. And I sort of look around, and sure enough, there's a car behind me, and he's keeping pace with me. And I'm thinking, what's he doing? So all of a sudden, he comes up by the side. And this is in the days when they used to roll the old window down, right? And he shouts at me, "Where are you going?" And I said, "Well, sir, I'm going to Southampton." "Oh, it's a long way," he said. "I've been following you for about 5 miles." He said, "You haven't dropped below 20 miles an hour." "Well done," he said. "Keep going." So off he goes, and I'm off, going. And I get probably 150 miles done, and a young guy comes up, well, an older guy to me, comes up by the side of me and asked me, I told him the whole story again. He said, "Would you like to come home for some food before you..." And so I went home, and a beautiful old lady, his mother, and gave me a full English breakfast. I don't know if you know what this is, but it's really fatty. It's not something you would go to bed on. And I wasn't going to go to bed there, but they wanted me to stay overnight. I said, no. I said, I've got to get home. So I get back on the bike. I think it's like 1 o'clock in the morning. And they were quite concerned about me. I said, I'll be okay. So as I left the city, it went really dark. It was... There's no moon, there's clouds, I guess, and I hit this hill, and it was very, very steep. I couldn't ride up it, even my low gear. So I jumped off the bike and started to walk, and the tree cover come all the way over the road, and you know, ever been in a situation like that, and all the rustling of the leaves, and the noises of the birds and whatever, you know, and I'm getting really scared, right? I'm trying to run up this hill, couldn't run, but I made it up to the top of the hill, jumped on the bike, and started going again. And I think it was about 60 miles I went, and I was absolutely shattered. And so I fell asleep in a bus shelter on the seat. And in the morning, baking bread woke me up. And there was a bakery just about a block away. So I went down there and got a lardy cake. I don't know if you know what a lardy cake is, but it's a big sticky bun that you call them here. It's about this thick, about this square. And so I ate that sucker, and off I went again. But I could only make it, I think, 60 miles I went then, and then again pretty much faded out. I ate some food, and the last 40 miles took me 4 hours. And I got home, I jumped in the bathtub, soaked away in the bathtub for an hour and a half, whatever, and then slept the next day. And it was about midday when I went to bed, I think. So that was my travel story. And hey, hyperactive kids do stuff like that.
So our last storyteller tonight is the legendary Sybil Davis. Sybil fell in love with stories as a child, and as an adult became more interested when she heard Mud Rooms, a storytelling night in Juneau, Alaska, where she's from. Her story is about an event in her youth. So come on up, Sybil.
It's just funny that Germany kind of goes through this evening in an odd way. Okay, we had been walking probably 3.5 hours in the forest outside of Kaiserslautern, Germany. And I was really tired, I was really hungry, and I looked up at Steve Dungy, my companion, and Seymour. And I just saw him, yeah, that's good. I just saw him in a really new light. And I said, well, let me go back to the beginning. We had to move from France, where we were living in a small town, which we loved. And my father worked for the armed forces, but he didn't wear a uniform. And he got transferred to Kaiserslautern, Germany, on an army base. So we had to live on an army base in an apartment building. 1133 was our number, on the 3rd floor. And everything was gray, everything was, it was moist, damp. We were depressed. None of us wanted to be there. We were unpacking all of our stuff in our 3rd floor apartment, and the door was opened, and this kid comes in, and he stands there and says, "Hi, I am Steve Dungy. I live downstairs on the 1st floor. Look what I can do." And he runs into the into the middle of our room on our nice carpet and does this really stupendous backbend, and it's really good. And then he pops up again and says, "Wow," kind of takes a bow, and we're all impressed and kind of floored. But I noticed that he's got dyed red hair. He has really white, really pasty, unhealthy-looking skin. And then when he smiled really big, all the tops of his teeth were green. And I thought, it was like mold or something. I thought, gosh, if he doesn't ever brush his teeth, we always have to brush our teeth. And then he disappears. He said, "Come down and visit any time." So the next day or two after I'm coming home from school, of course, I have no friends. I have nothing going on. And I passed by Steve's, and he said, "Hi, Sybil. Do you want a piece of pizza?" And I said, "Yeah." And so he said, "Come on in." And there is his nice, dark, it was really a cool apartment. Everything, he had big shag rug, I think it was orange, and he had overstuffed furniture there he had some siblings, which I never really paid attention to or saw. And it was dark, the curtains were kind of drawn, and Mrs. Dungy was giving out pizza on a paper napkin. And so she was very friendly and very nice, had a big smile. Her hair was like flat dishwater, blonde, gray, and she had a can of beer in one hand and a cigarette in the other with a really long ash at the end. And she had really bad posture. But the pizza was really good, and she was really nice. And so I really appreciated that, and it was just cozy in there, so dim and warm. I said, "Thanks for the pizza," and ran upstairs to the 3rd floor. A couple days later, I look out the window, and I see Steve. He's up on the sidewalk across the street, and he's got his hands in front of his chest, and he reaches his hands out, and then he pulls them back, and he takes 5 steps, and his little hips are going like this, and minces, and then throws this thing. And he does this a couple times, and I realize he's bowling. He's practicing bowling. And he also reacted to what he thought he got. And so I figured he's probably going into a big tournament or something. couple days after that, I'm coming home, and Steve's out there again, and he said, and I can also smell, I think, fish sticks and French fries in their house. They always has really good food like that we didn't get. And he said, Sybil, do you want to see the mushroom people? I said, yeah. He said, well, come here and don't, come quietly. And he took me over a ways away from the block buildings to a kind of a grassy area, trees there, but there was a rise over there, and it was grassy and mossy. And he said, lie down. So we both lay down side by side. And he said, right over there, if you look, eventually it comes up. The grass and the moss comes up, and I saw a little white head, a little like mushroom person head come out. And I said, whoa. And so we just looked and watched, and it was getting duskier and duskier, and they didn't appear. And he said that, they don't come out all the time. So I said, darn, I really did want to see the mushroom people another day. About a week later, I'm coming home from school again, no friends, no outside activities. I'm heading up to the 3rd floor of a building, 1133, and Steve's out there, and he said, Sybil, come here. So I go over next to him, and he said, look, I've got a really, really important mission, and I need somebody I can trust who will go with me. And it's really, really important, and it's secret, and you cannot say anything. I said, you can trust me, Steve. And so he said, okay, this is the deal. My father's on maneuvers, and I've got the secret information for the other opposing force, and I've got their exactly where they are, and I need to get that information to my father's battalion. If I don't, they're going to just be completely overrun, and I've just got to get it to them. And I said, wow, okay. And he said, meet me here tomorrow morning at 8. Wear clothes that blend into the woods, like camouflage. I said, I know that, Steve. So the next morning, I meet him there at 8 o'clock in the morning. I leave. Everybody's sleeping. It's Saturday. I don't tell my family where I'm going, but I'm meeting Steve. So we go and we head off into the woods in Kaiserslautern, Germany. And the woods are first this nice deciduous trees, and we pass by huge bomb holes, craters from the Second World War. And the woods get, the trees eventually start getting bigger and bigger as we walk further and further, and we come upon, we see in the future, up ahead of us, this is like 3 hours in, a Gasthaus. And we think, great, so we can go there and maybe get some water. And so we head over to the Gasthaus, which I guess is a beer hall, I guess. And these guys, as we're approaching it, these German guys come out, and they start yelling at us. And then they bend down, they pick up some rocks, and they start throwing the rocks at us. And they're shaking their fist, and they're, like they're really mad. And so, of course, we run away. It's frightening. I have no idea why they're mad. Maybe they don't like Americans or military or something. So anyway, we run, and that gets us a little off course. We have to correct. Steve he's got some writing on his palm, and he's been looking at a compass, and he's been directing us this whole time through the woods. And it will go going on, and I'm really hungry, and I'm really tired, and it's getting darker, and the woods are big and deep, and the trees are large, and I look up at Steve, and I suddenly realize, I don't know about this guy. What has he got even written? Was that even a compass? Does he really know the secret location of the opposing force? I'm just not sure. And I said, Steve, we need to turn around. I need to go home. It's going to get really dark, if we don't turn around now. And so he said, Sybil, I think, yeah, you're right. And we turn around, and I start leading us back, and we eventually, after about 3 hours or so, we get back home, and I am so happy, and I've just passed by Steve's really cozy apartment with his family, and it smelled like pizza night again, and I ran up the 3 flights to our floor, our house, our apartment, and my father's in there smoking his pipe and listening to classical music, and it's all bright, and my mother's in the kitchen. She's probably drinking a little sherry, and she's smoking probably too, but cooking chicken, and it smells good, and I'm just really happy to be there, and it's airy, and I'm home. But all these years later, I think back to Kaiserslautern, Germany, and that army base and Building 1133, and my strongest memory is Steve Dungy.
Thank you, Sybil. And thank you all of our storytellers tonight. Thank you for coming and enjoying the presentations. Please join us next month where we will have 7 more stories. Again, if you are interested in telling your story, you can talk to Sybil after, or we have some papers at the front.
Flyers, and it's actually Burien Culture Hub, 7 stories. You can find it really easy.
Just Google
yes,
Burien Culture Hub,
story, and then you'll
7 stories.
find
Do you know what the theme is next month?
I should. But it is, it's a good one. It's stories of desire. Things you
Yes.
should regret but don't.
Stories of desire, things you should regret but don't. Like maybe going in the woods with Steve. Or maybe you do regret. I don't know. Yeah. Anyway,
It was an adventure.
thank you so much for coming tonight, and we'll see you next time.